Bernie Sanders was just speaking in Altoona, Wisconsin as part of his Fight the Oligarch tour. As Senator Sanders writes, over 15,000 people came out in Republican districts in Michigan and Wisconsin this weekend to say no to oligarchy, no to authoritarianism, no to Medicaid cuts, no to huge tax breaks for billionaires. If we stand together, we can defeat Trumpism. Now, we know that MAGA Republicans are canceling their town halls, but Senator Bernie Sanders was in Wisconsin, he was in Michigan, speaking to reddish and purplish areas, speaking to workers. Here he was in Altoona, and here's one of the messages that he had to deliver. Let's play it.
We have people who have serious alcohol problems, people have food problems, tobacco problems. A lot of people have addictions. But I will tell you what the most serious addiction is. It is the addiction of greed of this billionaire class. I mean, how much do you need to live? And there is no stopping them. And what is scary is right now, they are prepared to dismember the federal government and cut programs that low-income and working-class people desperately need so that they can give themselves an enormous tax break of over $1 trillion. By the way,
now I want to play for you the full speech. Again, I was debating if I should clip it up for you, but this speech is just too powerful. You have to watch the whole thing and you have to share it with people. I think Senator Sanders is meeting the moment right now. Watch this full speech, share it with everybody you know, and then I want to talk to you about it after it's done. Let's play this speech.
Thank you, Altoona. This is an unbelievable turnout, and I want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon. I want to thank Altoona High School, Police Music, Joanna and Cindy and Bill for their wonderful remarks. Love you too. And I gotta tell you, being here is like being in rural Vermont. Most of Vermonters live in towns like Altoona. I would say well over half the people in Vermont live in towns of 500 or less. So in fact, Altoona would be one of the largest cities in the state of Vermont. That's true. So why was I in Kenosha last night? We had a great turnout. Why am I here this afternoon? Why am I heading to Warren, Michigan this evening? And the answer is that we have some serious problems in this country, and together we're going to address them. And given what is going on in Washington right now, how we respond to this moment, and things are going on literally every day. Pick up the paper, something new is happening. How we respond together to this moment will impact not only our lives, but our kids' lives and the future of this planet. So what we are doing right now is making it clear, here in Altoona and all over this country, that the American people, and I believe this, even whether you're conservative, you're progressive, you're moderate, you're independent, Republican, Democrat, you know what? The American people do not want a handful of billionaires to be running our government. And the American people want a president and an administration that respects the Constitution and does not move us toward an authoritarian form of society. You know, I got to tell you, in Vermont, I don't know how you do it here in Wisconsin, but in Vermont, and we just had it a few days ago, we have town meetings all over the state. Small towns have meetings, and they argue about how much they want to put into the schools and in the roads, and everybody gets up and they yell and they scream and they do their thing. It's called democracy. And you know what? I don't know how many of you remember this. Winston Churchill said, he said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all others. So we prefer the arguing and the yelling and the debating rather than have a handful of people telling us how to live our lives. And I've been thinking about something lately. Every year, I go to a Memorial Day parade in a town called Vergennes, Vermont, northern Vermont. It's a lovely parade, a lot of people out. And at the end of the parade, a couple of hundred people come to the town green, and the organizers, people give speeches, I give a speech, and they always bring a kid from the high school up. And they have that kid read the Gettysburg Address that Lincoln gave in 1863. And that seems so relevant today. In 1863, a few days after the terrible Battle of Gettysburg, where thousands, tens of thousands of people had died fighting to end the horror of slavery. And Lincoln goes there a few days later, and he looks out on the battlefield. And this is what he said. And some of you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. He said, that we here highly resolve that these dead, those people who had died in the battle, shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. And then he said, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And that is why I am in Altoona with you today. And let me tell you what we're up against, and I want to be very honest with you. I want you to think back some 6 weeks or so ago when Trump was inaugurated as president. And I was there. I was kind of right up front where you are. They pushed, I don't know why I ended up front, but I was there. It's not exactly the front row seat that I wanted, but there I was. And right behind President Trump, as you may recall, as he was taking the oath of office, were the 3 wealthiest men in the country. Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg. But that's not enough. Standing behind those guys were 13 other billionaires who were nominated by Trump to head up major government agencies. In other words, it was all there for everybody to see. They weren't hiding anything. I got to give them credit for that. The Trump administration is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, and for the billionaire class. For a number of years, I have been talking about how our nation is moving toward an oligarchic form of society. My friends, we are no longer moving toward oligarchy, we are living in oligarchy. And as we assemble here today, we are going to make it very clear that oligarchy is not what this country is about. I want to tell you, I want to mention something, and I honestly don't understand it. We have people like Musk and others, people who have more wealth. They can fulfill all their family needs for 100 generations. I mean, billions and billions of dollars. And yet, despite all of their wealth, they want more and more and more. And I honestly don't understand. Everybody here wants to be comfortable. Everybody here wants to make money. We all want to retire with dignity, want to take care of our kids. That's kind of natural. But what these guys have is a very serious problem. You know, we have in Vermont, and I'm sure in Wisconsin, serious addiction problems, correct? Yes. I mean, it is horrible. I mean, in Vermont, we're really dealing with a lot of drug addiction, with overdoses. It's a national problem. We have people who have serious alcohol problems. People have food problems, tobacco problems. A lot of people have addictions. But I will tell you what the most serious addiction is. It is the addiction of greed of this billionaire class. I mean, how much do you need to live? And there is no stopping them. And what is scary is right now, they are prepared to dismember the federal government and cut programs that low-income and working-class people desperately need so that they can give themselves an enormous tax break of over $1 trillion. By the way, the reason we have picked, as I mentioned earlier, we were a couple of weeks ago in Omaha and Iowa City, and tonight here we're in various towns in the Midwest. It's not an accident where we are going. The reason we are in this community is you have a congressman who won by a somewhat slim margin. Now, I am here, we're doing a town meeting. Now, I come from Vermont. Well, I think if I'm from Vermont doing a town meeting here, your own congressman should come here. And I think you should be very polite and respectful. He gets a chance to talk, explain his point of view, and you have the right to ask questions. And I think the key question in Wisconsin and all over America is why the hell is anybody thinking of a $1 trillion tax break for the 1% and massive cuts to Medicaid, nutrition, and education? And here's the point, again, why I am here. In the House, as I think many of you know, the Republicans have, it's very tight. They have a 3-seat majority, just 3 out of 435 people. If two Republicans, members of the House, go to their leader and say, you know what, I got a lot of constituents who are on Medicaid. I got a lot of kids who need nutrition programs. And you know what? I am not going to vote to cut Medicaid to give tax breaks to billionaires. If 2 Republican congressmen say that, we have defeated their proposal. That's what we've got to do. Now, what does an $888 billion cut to Medicaid mean? It means that millions of kids right now who are on Medicaid will be thrown off of their health insurance. It means, and this is not widely known, I know in Vermont, and I think it's true all over the country, we got nursing homes that are really, really struggling, right? Okay. 2/3 of the people who are in nursing homes are funded by Medicaid. So if you make massive cuts to Medicaid, your mom, your dad may not be able to stay in a nursing home or get the quality of care they need in that nursing home. I have worked very hard over the years to expand community health centers throughout Vermont. Because I have the radical idea that when people get sick, they should be able to walk into a doctor's office. And today, some 32 million Americans utilize community health centers. That's primary health care. Dental care is a big deal, right? Mental health, lower cost prescription drugs. 40% of the funding for community health centers comes from Medicaid. You cut Medicaid, significantly harder for people to get primary health care in America. But what else are they going after? It's not just Medicaid, it is also Social Security. At a time when millions of seniors are struggling to heat their homes, and we know what cold weather is about, right? Or to buy prescription drugs, Musk and his cohorts plan to fire over half the workers at the Social Security Administration. Now, what does that mean in real terms? It means right now, the Social Security Administration is significantly understaffed. And I get calls every day from people. I'm trying to get a hold of Social Security. They're not returning my calls. It's taking me too long. Right now, and there are some 30, you want to hear something that is so horrible, given the fact that we are the richest country on earth, is that 30,000 Americans die every year waiting for an understaffed Social Security to approve disability benefits. Today, all right? Can you imagine somebody's old, they're on disability, they can't get the benefits, they die earlier than they should. If these cuts go through, the number of people who die will go up very significantly. That is not what this country is about, and we're not going to allow that to happen. But it is not just Medicaid that they want to cut or Social Security. They're going after the Veterans Administration. Do we have any veterans or veteran families in the room right now? Well, thank you. One of the honors of my life was that several years ago I chaired the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And what I believe is what I think the overwhelming majority of Americans believe, no matter what their political view may be. And that is when somebody puts his or her life on the line to defend this country, we keep the promises we made to those veterans. But Musk and Trump recently announced there was a proposal out there that they want to fire, or they have a planned reduction of 83,000 employees at the Veterans Administration. So what that means is to the veterans, and in Vermont we have a really, really good VA hospital. Veterans appreciate it, and I'm sure that's true all over the country. What it means is that the quality of health care that veterans get will deteriorate. The amount of time that it takes for them to get the benefits that are due them will become even longer. You do not balance the budget on the backs of the men and women who defended this country. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, that is the second largest veterans organization in the country, they said yesterday, and I quote, "We now call upon VA to reconsider its planned reduction of 83,000 employees." They are right. They are absolutely right. And I call upon the Trump administration to rescind that order. Musk and Trump want to dismantle the Department of Education. 27 million kids in low-income and working-class communities would see their schools lose funding. That means your property taxes would go up. Schools would have less funding to attract teachers. In addition, Pell Grant funding would be cut, making it harder for kids to get a higher education. And if all of that is not bad enough, in the proposal to save money so that we can give tax breaks to the 1%, Trump's budget would cut nutrition assistance by at least $230 billion. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about the fact that in the richest country on earth, we have children who are hungry. That's a disgrace unto itself. But think for a moment about the vulgarity of the richest people in the world trying to get more tax breaks and in the process cutting nutrition programs for hungry children. There is no world, no universe, no religion on earth where that is morally acceptable. So what's going on right now, they are trying to dismember the federal government, and they lie a lot about what government does and does not do. But in the process, hundreds of thousands of federal employees may lose their jobs. And I want to say something, and I want you to think about this for a moment. Now, people may say, well, that's really a bad thing. I worry about somebody losing their job. How are they going to get by? How are they going to get health care, retirement, all that stuff? And we all feel for those men and women. But I also want to tell you that even if you're not in the federal government, pay close attention to what they are doing and how they are doing it. All of you know that there is going to be a technological revolution taking place right now, and that is artificial intelligence and robotics. So you're going to have computers and robots replacing human labor, okay? Now, I happen to believe that if technology can make us more productive, that is a good thing. But the benefits must go to the workers, not just those who own the technology. So if they are prepared to tell workers at the federal government, some of whom have dedicated their whole lives to public service, hey, you're out of here, goodbye. Tell me what you did last week, you're out of here, goodbye, goodbye. What do you think they're going to do to people in the private sector when artificial intelligence comes? You're gone, forget it, you're out on the streets. Our job is to make sure that when you have these technologies, it benefits all of us, not just the few. So pay attention to what's going on. Now, I was, the other day on Tuesday, I was at Trump's State of the Union. It's my job, I went. And what was very interesting and it's important to pay attention to this. Trump spoke for 100 minutes. I think it was the longest State of the Union ever. And what he did is created, I think, a parallel universe. What these guys do, which is, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the politicians don't lie. Politicians always have lied, and they always have stretched the truth. That's the nature of the game. But what we're seeing now is something very different than what we have seen in the past. It's one thing to stretch the truth, to fib a little bit here. But we are now looking at the phenomenon of the big lie. You all know what that means? What a big lie is about is you say something absurd that is blatantly false, and you say it over and over and over again without shame. Just to give you a few examples, just a few. Trump claimed that the 2020 election was stolen from him and that he won by a landslide. That's a lie. And it's a lie, think about what that lie means. It's to cast doubts on the way we do elections in America. Why do I want to bother to vote? Why do I want to participate in democracy if somebody's going to steal the election? That's what that's about. Trump has claimed that the January 6th insurrection, where people were trying to deny Biden from becoming president, he claimed that that insurrection was a day of love. A lie. And then this great lover of law and order pardoned all these people who injured over 100 police officers on Capitol Hill. Trump has claimed again, trying to destroy faith in the democratic process. He has claimed that millions of undocumented people vote in American elections. A lie. He has claimed that climate change is a hoax originating in China. And then more recently, he has claimed that Ukraine started the horrific war with Russia. But it was not just Trump. A couple of months ago, and I had worked very hard. I was chairman of a committee called the Health, Education, Labor Committee. And we worked really hard on some public health programs which would have expanded funding for community health centers, would have lowered the cost of prescription drugs as part of a bigger bill called the Continuing Resolution. Democrats, Republicans worked really hard for months. Literally, the day when Congress and the House was going to vote on this, Musk started putting out emails on his Twitter platform, and he said, members of Congress, don't vote for this legislation. It's terrible. It will give members of Congress a 40% increase in their salaries. 40%. Total lie. It was a 3.4% increase. And as a result of what Musk did, that important legislation was defeated. And just last week at his speech, the president repeated the claim that Musk started, that zillions, you all heard, zillions of dead people between the ages of 100 and 500 are collecting Social Security checks. Total, and what is the reason for doing that? You tell me. Why do you do that? Hold on, raise your hand. Somebody raise their hand. Yeah, why? Good, exactly. Young man here said, put down in Social Security. Look, if you're standing out there and somebody says, well, the whole system is broken, people are 200 years old collecting Social Security, massive fraud, people say, Jesus, do we really want to keep the system? That is the purpose. So let's be clear. Well over 99% of Social Security checks are going out to people who earned those checks. Social Security has been the most successful and popular program in American history. It's a program that has kept millions of seniors from poverty. We're not going to let them destroy Social Security. What these guys are trying to do when they lie and lie and lie, they create a situation in which instead of having serious and honest discussion, people have different points of view. What do we do about Social Security? What do we do about health care? What do we do about education? Important issues. What we end up spending half our lives doing is not discussing those issues, but we end up trying to respond to these absolute lies. Now, I want you to think back. I don't know how many of you saw Trump's speech, but if you listen hard to his State of the Union speech, what you observed is that, in fact, he had relatively little to say about the State of the Union. Almost nothing. You know, when you talk about the State of the Union, what it is, okay, what is going on? What's going on in the country? You know, what are the needs of the people? What kind of pain are we seeing? How do we respond? That's what you do. People can disagree, but that's what you do. Unbelievably, Trump spoke for 100 minutes, and he almost completely ignored the issues that are keeping millions of working class people up at night as they worry about how their families are going to survive in these very difficult times. Now, let us, this afternoon, do something really radical. You ready? Let us actually do what Trump did not do, and that is take a look at what is going on in our country, especially for working families. Let's start off with the sad reality that in the richest country in the history of the world, today, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And the environment that I grew up in, the life that I had, has shaped who I am as a person and, in fact, my political views. It means, you know what? I'm going to tell you what living paycheck to paycheck, but you know it better than I do. Raise your hand. What is it like living paycheck to paycheck? Who wants to? All right, hold on, one at a time. I can't. Yes. Well, terrible, all right? Yes. Hungry? Hunger. All right, let me get some hands back there. Be loud. We got a hand there. Okay, ma'am. Stressful. Stay on that issue, sir. You're not sure if you're going to be able to keep the heat on. Yes, ma'am. Trying to find a way to plan a meal for until your next paycheck comes. Ma'am? Forget about buying shoes and clothes for your kids. Ma'am? Skipping doctor's visits. Okay, I see a hand back there. Sir, yeah. Fear that your world is going to fall apart. Sir. Am I getting glasses or can I get them for my kids? Sir. Can't plan for the future. Hand back there, sir. Okay, psychological warfare. Yes. You make impossible decisions for your family, sir. General insecurity. Okay, I think you got it. So let me just tell you something on a personal level. My mom died young. Her dream, we lived in an apartment our whole lives, a rent-controlled apartment. Her dream, what she wanted more than anything, was to own our own house. And we never achieved that. We didn't have the money to own our own house and other things. Today in America, we live as a nation shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. Our life expectancy is low. Do you all know that? So we live about 4 years shorter lives than people in Europe or Japan, etc. And that's bad. But I'm going to tell you something that is even worse, that is almost never discussed at all. And that is, if you are working class in the United States of America, you live 7 years shorter life on average than do wealthy people. In other words, and I'm not just talking about poor people who are living out on the street. They don't live very long. I'm talking about working class in general. 7 years shorter lives than the people on top. Why is that? Help me out here. All right, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing the word stress. All right? All right, and that's what a lot of your responses were. It deals with stress. What does it mean? And we heard this just now. If you're worried about whether or not you can buy shoes for your kids. What does it mean if you're worried that your landlord's going to raise the rent and you can't afford to pay that rent? Where are you going to live? What does it mean if your car breaks down and you got a $1,000 repair bill, but you can't afford the $1,000, you don't have a car, you can't get to work? And what happens if you can't get to work? What does it mean if your kid says, Mom, I'm sick, and you can't afford to take her to the doctor? You add all of that up. What does it mean if your boss tells you, guess what, you're working the midnight shift because you don't have a regular schedule? You add all of that stuff up, that economic pressure. How do I survive? It wreaks havoc on our bodies and it wreaks havoc on our minds. If we were a poor country, I would come before you and give you a very different speech. I'd say, hey, look, I'm sorry, we're poor. We can't afford decent education, can't afford decent health care, can't afford to protect the environment. I want you never to forget, we are the richest country in the history of the world. There is no excuse for people dying young because of that stress. Now, not only, of course, did Trump not deal with that reality, unbelievably, 100-minute speech, he didn't say one word about health care. How many of you think the health care system in America works well? Well, you're right. We are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the people of any other nation. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. 60,000 people die every year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. Somehow or another, Mr. Trump forgot to talk about health care. Maybe it has to do with the fact that he didn't want to antagonize his friends in the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. You all know that? Sometimes 10 times more than what Canadians or Europeans are paying. I didn't hear one word from the president dealing with the reality that 1 out of 4 Americans can't afford the prescriptions their doctors prescribe. Amazingly enough, in Vermont, I don't know about here, we have a major housing crisis. You got 800,000 Americans are homeless, and we got 20 million people spending more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. So if you're spending 50%, what do you got left? Not much, all right? Not one word on the housing crisis. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. Not one word from the president on that. Not one word on the fact that the 3 richest guys in the country who are standing right behind them own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Got that? And needless to say, the president had nothing to say about the existential threat of climate change other than drill, baby, drill, which will make a dangerous situation even worse. But it is not only domestic policies that Trump is doing us wrong by. Let's take a look at what's going on internationally. You know, we all grew up understanding that America is the longest standing democracy in the history of the world. We're proud of that. And I'm not here to tell you that our foreign policy has always been right. It has not. But at the end of the day, for people all over the world, the truth is they did look to the United States. They read our Declaration of Independence. They read our Constitution, which is a really extraordinary document being, written in the 18th century. They looked to America as a nation of democracy and freedom. And for the first time in the history of our country, we have a president who is allying himself with a ruthless dictator in Russia. And not only that, and this is an issue I have paid a lot of attention to, maybe differences of opinion here, but I have very strongly opposed the U.S. giving military aid to the Netanyahu government in Israel. Trump wants to continue the very dumb policies that Biden had and provide more money for Netanyahu. I'm going to do whatever I can with other members of the Senate to stop more arms sales going to Israel. And also, when you think about who we are as a people, and we are proud of our democratic heritage, we're proud of our generosity, who we are as a people. If you can believe it, Trump is now telling the 2.2 million people who are in Gaza, who have suffered horribly, 45,000 dead, mostly women and kids, whole infrastructure wiped out, over 100,000 wounded. And you know what he's telling them now? You have to leave your homeland because we want to build a playground, a Riviera for the rich. That is almost unspeakable. Now, let me just say that it is not good enough for us to be on the defense fighting Trump and Musk every step of the way. We got to do that, but we have to do something more, and that is get on the offense. And by that, what do I mean by that? The truth of the matter is you may not see it on TV or read it in the papers. But the truth of the matter is, and we polled on this a dozen times, the American people want fundamental changes in the way government does business. They want a government that works for them, not the billionaire class. So let me very briefly tell you something that is not Bernie Sanders' idea, not your idea. It's ideas supported by the overwhelming majority of the American people, Democrats, Republicans, independents. Number one, the American people want to end the corrupt campaign finance system that we have. Does anybody in America believe that it is appropriate for somebody like Musk to contribute $270 million to Trump's campaign, and then you get rewarded by becoming the most important man in government? But I got to tell you, it is not just Musk and Republicans, it is Democratic billionaires as well. We are not going to make progress on the issues facing working families unless we have campaign finance reform, unless we get rid of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. And unless we move to public funding of elections. You know what else the American people think? They don't think we should be giving tax breaks to billionaires. And at a time when millions of people all over our country are working for starvation wages, the American people want us to end this absurdity of having a 7.25 federal government minimum wage, raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $17 an hour. Do we have any union members here? Okay. All over this country, workers increasingly understand that if they're going to get decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions, they've got to join a union. And millions of people want to join unions, but they're running against corporate opposition. If you want to join a union, you're going to get fired. You're going to be taken into a back room, be lectured about how terrible unions are. You're going to be threatened. Vote for a union. We're taking this plant to China. All of that stuff is illegal, but they get away with it. That is why we got to pass legislation I just introduced, the PRO Act, punishing those corporations who act illegally when workers are trying to form unions. And here's something else the American people understand. Right now, 22% of seniors are living on $15,000 a year or less. Can you believe that? 50% of seniors are living on $30,000 or less. No, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. And here's an issue that the American people also understand. There is something fundamentally wrong when we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. The function of a sane and rational healthcare system is not to provide huge profits for the insurance industry and the drug companies. The function of a sane system is to provide quality care to all. We are spending twice as much per capita as other countries. We don't even have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough dentists. We don't have enough pharmacists. So we got to take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies. Healthcare is a human right. Let's pass Medicare for all. In the United States of America, we can solve the housing crisis by building at least 4 million units of low-income and affordable housing. Let's put people to work, union jobs, let's do it. And I want you to think about another insanity. We're living in a competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce in the world, and yet kids Young people, families going deeply, deeply into debt. For what? So their kids could get a decent education. We should be doing what other countries do, make public colleges, universities, trade schools, tuition free. And it's not just the college degree. We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need carpenters. We need apprentice programs which give those kids that education without worrying about the cost. And I hear a whole lot of talk about freedom, freedom. Well, if anybody in Congress believes in freedom, then stand with the women in this country who should have the freedom to control their own bodies. Look, I know, let me conclude, and you've been very patient, and I appreciate that. I've gone on longer than I thought. But thank you. Look, this is a difficult moment in the history of our country, but I think we all understand that it is not the first difficult moment in the history of our country. And in this moment, despair is not an option. Can't do it. Hiding under the covers as much as we would like to and turning off the TV is not an option. All of you know that real change only occurs not from the top on down, but from the bottom on up. It occurs when ordinary people stand together against wealth and power and injustice. And I want you all to remember, in these difficult times, remember that when this country was founded, think about it, back in the 1770s, you got these colonial guys, and they had to take on the entire British Empire. Think about it. And people said, you can't do that. That's crazy. King of England, the most powerful guy in the world. They stood together, they took him on, and they won, and we became the United States. Think about the 1830s, 1840s, the abolitionist movement, when people, many parts of the country said slavery is immoral. It's horrific. We cannot allow it to continue. They had to take on enormously powerful forces, and we fought a terrible civil war. But slavery was abolished. And to the brothers and the sisters in the labor movement, think about the history of the American labor movement. Think about the early part of the 20th century when kids were working in factories, when people were working 7 days a week, when people had no rights on the job. And workers said to their employers, we want a union. And the employer said, go to hell. And workers had to fight. And they got beaten up, and sometimes they got killed. I was just reading today, back in the 1936, you know how the UAW was formed? They did a sit-in. They took over the General Motors factories in Flint, Michigan. They stood up and they fought. And the result of that is we have a union movement that helped create the middle class of this country. And think about the struggles of Dr. King and the civil rights movement. Think about the women's movement. Women fought and died and went to jail to get women the right to vote in the 1920s, and the environmental movement and the gay movement. So I understand, and you understand, that the oligarchs are enormously powerful. They control our economy. They control much of the media. They have enormous influence over our politics and our political system. But from the bottom of my heart, I believe they can be defeated, and we're going to do that. Now, their strategy is not complicated. They understand that when we stand together, we win. When they divide us up, they win. And their goal is to divide us up by the color of our skin, where we were born, our sexual orientation, our religion. And we're not going to let them do that. So when we stand together, not only are we going to defeat the oligarchs, in my humble opinion, we can create a government that works for all of us, not just the few. Let's go forward together. Let's do it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the exact type of speech we need right now. Senator Bernie Sanders speaking to huge crowds in Wisconsin, in Michigan, as part of his Fight the Oligarch tour. We are going to keep covering it here on the MeidasTouch Network. We know that corporate media is not covering it. I know they prefer to cover all of the Trump speeches all, throughout 2021 and on. And now, notably, they're not covering speeches like this. We're going to cover all of Senator Sanders' speeches. In addition, if any other Democrats are going to start doing speeches like that, go do it. We will cover it. We will make sure that we give the full speech, the attention we just gave Senator Sanders, because it's time to stand up for workers and fight the oligarchs. Thanks for supporting the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers together.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.